name's Adam Barry. I'm the CEO of PathCheck Foundation. And what I wanted to do today was provide a little bit of an update on how we see Ian Express impacting the overall market. We're really excited about this new technology and new capability that Apple and Google announced this week. And we think it's a really positive thing for the field overall and for our efforts to use digital technologies to address the crisis that we're facing with the COVID-19 pandemic. Let me start by just saying a little bit about what is Ian Express. So basically, this is a new technology solution that builds on the Google Apple exposure notification framework to promote the adoption of exposure notification in states around the United States primarily. One of the things that's important to note is that the Ian Express solution is different on iOS and Android. So a few of those highlights: on iOS, Ian Express is actually built into the operating system. There's no additional app that has to be installed, and it's accessible through your settings screen. It's released now in the most recent OS update, 13.7, so that should be rolling out around the world as we speak. This capability is really designed as a backstop primarily for people who don't download a full-featured app. And one of the nice things about the way it's designed is it both can promote and coexist with a full-featured app. But with that in mind, it doesn't have really features for kind of advanced functionality or customization. It's very much the kind of baseline capabilities that you need to do exposure notification. On the Android side, it's a little different. Google faces a bit of a different challenge here because of the way Android is distributed on third-party phones and hardware. It's more difficult to roll out operating system updates. So the solution that Google came up with was a simple way to basically generate kind of a bare bones Android app for exposure notification. Now, in this case, that app generation isn't available yet. They're expecting it to come end of September, early October. This is more designed for states, particularly states in the US, that don't have a full-featured app yet. One of the disadvantages of this approach is it can't coexist with a full-featured app. So really, states are going to face a choice. Do they want to use a full-featured app, or do they want to go with this really kind of bare bones app on Android? And I think another thing to keep in mind is there was a little bit of a myth we've heard in some places that Google has plans to continue to develop this, to sort of expand it into a really deep and rich kind of full-featured application. And that's not the case. Their really goal is to have the simplest basic exposure notification possible. And that's really to try to address the needs of states that are moving very slowly in terms of getting to market a full-featured app. So the question then obviously becomes, well, who should use Ian Express? And again, it's a little bit different choices on iOS and Android. Our recommendation is that every jurisdiction should be enabling Ian Express on the iOS or Apple phones. It's a great complement to a full-featured app, and it'll help to get exposure notification out much more widely. I think with Android, really it's only, I think, most appropriate for states who really have zero capacity to launch a full-featured app. And one of the things that's interesting that's developing here in the market is that if you were to dial back a few months, building a full-featured app was a really significant endeavor, but that's changed a lot. There's now open source projects where you can get a full-featured app to market very quickly at a very low cost. So I think this kind of context of these choices are changing right now very rapidly for jurisdictions. So one of the obvious questions then becomes, well, why should a state even use a full-featured app? If you can get Ian Express and it's in iOS and you can generate a simple Android app, why go ahead with a full-featured app? And we really see kind of three primary reasons. The first is we believe, and I think there's good support for this, that having a full-featured app can drive better adoption and better engagement. The second is that with a full-featured app, you get better efficacy, which means the app is more effective at actually containing the pandemic because there's more functionality. And I think also very importantly, we're still on a path of continuous improvement. This is a relatively new field, and literally every week we're discovering by looking at how users are using these applications and the impact they're having, how to improve it. And I don't think we've gotten to a point yet where we fully realize what is possible within these apps for the full impact. And you don't get that if you only have EN Express. And then finally, in most cases, depending on the vendor that you choose to work with, you're going to get access to a richer set of support services and maintenance services if you go with a full-featured app from a high-quality vendor or high-quality solution provider that can back you up. That's not a set of capabilities that Google really wants to offer for the EN Express Android app. I think their goal, it's not to say that they're just going to leave people high and dry. Obviously, they're an amazing company, but I think their goal is to get just a really simple piece of functionality out there and not spend a lot of time providing ongoing support to states. Let's look at each of these in a little bit more detail. I want to highlight a few of the things in terms of better adoption and engagement. I think one of the first and kind of key pieces really has to do with the first couple bullets on this slide, and that's the ability for a state to go to market with just a really simple, clean message: get our app. So pick a name and you drive it out there, and there's a really simple message, and all the marketing behind it can reflect this consistent user experience everywhere. And then as a secondary message, you can communicate to people in your community that you should turn on exposure notification in the settings for iOS for Apple phones. That's really different than if you have to say, well, hey, do this EN Express thing. You've got to do one thing on the Apple phone. You've got to do a different thing over on the on your Android phone. So this helps, I think, definitely kind of get a more consistent message out there. Also, the onboarding experience can be customized more for the kind of unique needs of your jurisdiction. That might include translations. It might include specific things about how the state is responding to COVID-19. And then you start to get into really the richer feature set, especially features like sharing the app that helps promote others using it. And of course, on iPhones, you get the best of both, right? You get the full featured app and you get the capabilities in the operating system. Another one of the myths that we've heard out there is that if you go with the EN Express app for Android, Google's going to do more to promote the app. And that's really not the message that they're putting out there. The additional capabilities that they're offering for promotion are going to be equally as strong for both the EN Express app that they generate or for a full-featured app. So really, this offers kind of, EN Express really doesn't have any advantages in terms of adoption. Now, when you look at functionality, we can speak about the PathCheck Gain Mobile full-featured app, which is, we've announced is being implemented in 7 jurisdictions right now around the world. Of course, there's a number of other wonderful open source projects out there. And I think I'm going to talk about a few of these features, really not so much to say one of these features is particularly important, but more to sort of articulate just a little bit more clearly the trajectory that this industry is on right now and this field is on in terms of the capabilities that are being added to these apps. So if you look at our goals over the next couple of months, there's really 3 areas. One is adoption, the other is post-exposure notification experience, and the third is measurement and evaluation. So if you look at some of the things that we're doing in the PathCheck Gain mobile app, we're continuously refining the user experience based on user input. We're building in more robust features for in-app community sharing. We're enhancing the kinds of push notifications that show up on your phone. This helps increase engagement. So there's kind of an ongoing engagement with users, bringing them back to the app so they don't accidentally turn off Bluetooth or disable the app. Another feature that we think is really nice is automating the test code verification. So one of the key features about these apps is that in order to upload your positive, the information that you upload when you get a positive test, you need a verification code. That's one of the trickiest points of integration, and we think there's some really smart ways to simplify that. Then, if you look at the post-exposure notification experience, I think this is really the area where you're going to see the most innovation over the next couple of months in the field overall. If you look at the basic EN Express experience, it's really simple. Like you're going to get kind of a basic pop-up notification. It's pretty minimal. And that can create some real challenges because the goal isn't merely to give someone a notice that they've been exposed. It's really to help them interpret that notice and then make smart decisions about what they should do. And so we think that a lot of it, some additional capabilities are going to be super valuable there. So some of the things that we're working on and will be rolling out shortly are a self-screener. So you can just say, okay, I got exposed. Well, let's take a look at, who am I? What are kind of the situation I'm in? Where might I have been exposed? Am I showing any symptoms? And that can kind of help guide you to make some better choices about what you might do in response to the exposure. Another thing is just making it really easy to connect with the contact tracing team. Many states have a well-trained team, and that team can help answer questions, direct people to services, provide guidance on what they ought to do in terms of things like self-quarantining. Another thing is having an individual symptom tracker. So this might be, all right, I got exposed, but let me start tracking some of my symptoms to see if I'm getting sick. Finding a test center can also be something that's really helpful for folks. And then we think one of the most exciting directions here is starting to get the exposure notifications targeted in smart ways based on the context for people. So am I on a university? Maybe I have access to a little bit different set of services. Maybe my employer is offering access to some services. And so getting that context can also help people using the app identify what to do. And then, of course, the last area is just continuing the quality of information so that we really understand how these apps are working in the market, but doing that in a way that still continues to really preserve individual privacy. Now, the third area, kind of the third advantage I mentioned of a full-featured app is stronger support and app maintenance. And there's just, very much just depends on the partner that you choose, but I think what you'll see from the leading projects and the leading solution providers in the market is that there's really nice ongoing support for the application. We're in this committed not just to kind of, knock out one app for a jurisdiction and then leave, but just continuously develop the capabilities of these systems and these solutions. And so, our goal is to really partner with jurisdictions to be rolling out regular enhancements that are appropriate for that jurisdiction. Not every state is going to use all of the same features, and that's smart because I think each jurisdiction that needs to adapt to its own unique needs. Now, in response to this, we're trying to provide support to states that are now facing this decision about where to go. One of the nice things for us about being a nonprofit and really being mission driven is that we're not really particular about which software you choose to use. We're very proud of the software that we've built, but we're also really supportive if there's a better project that's a better fit for your state or a different solution provider you want to work with, or if Ian Express is the right solution. We sort of approach the market more thinking about how we can achieve the mission of containing the pandemic and revitalizing economies while we preserve privacy. So there's a couple things that we're going to offer as advisory services for states that are looking at Ian Express. So the first is just helping you evaluate the choice between a full-featured app and an Ian Express solution. The second is that we can help preparing some of the configuration information. So there's over 60 different choices that you need to set for Ian Express. It's actually the same choices that you need to make for the most part with a full-featured app. And there's some specific choices around the sort of epidemiological strategy that you want to take around exposure notifications, and we can help with that. And then the third area is that depending on how you want to handle the test verification codes and the flow of those codes through your communication and contact tracing program through the PathCheck Alliance, which we announced last week, which is an amazing network of solution providers and technology providers around the world, we can help you support that integration if you want to do more advanced distribution strategies for distributing your test verification codes. So there's a lot of different ways we can help, and definitely encourage states to reach out to us if you want assistance. Similarly, with a full-featured app, some of the same kinds of things. So we can help you evaluate what's the right choice. We have some great tools for looking at kind of what are the needs in your jurisdiction versus what's available in a full-featured app and an Ian Express and in some of the different full-featured apps that are in the market. Of course, we have a free open source full-featured app. We've designed it so it's really fast to deploy and easy to customize. It has some of the same configuration characteristics as Ian Express, and ultimately we'll be bringing those closer together. So there's really a standard set of configuration choices, and it's very, very quick to get an app generated and up in your store. One of the things I didn't mention, but again, it's one of those kind of myths that's out there and it's good to address, is that if you choose to use an Android Ian Express app, you'll work with Google to basically generate your app, but you'll actually release it through the state's account in the App Store. So basically, you're responsible for the distribution and the release, and say, for example, like the terms of use of the license to the end user is from the state. It's not from Google. Google's really generating the app, but then the rest of the distribution falls on the states, which is the same with the full featured app. And that's because of the way that Google and Apple have designed this overall kind of scheme for how these apps get distributed. And then finally, as I mentioned before, we have an amazing network of solution providers that can provide hosting, customization, support deployment, and support ongoing maintenance. And we back up those solution providers with a bunch of our own professional services that helps make sure they've got the resources and the information that they need every day to do that well. I want to end on just kind of a final note here. This is a quote from one of the amazing epidemiologists that we work with at the Mayo Clinic. And I think this comment here really brings to the front the most important kind of value proposition in this area for choosing to use a full-featured app. And that really is that this is a developing field, that over the next kind of 30 to 90 days, we're going to go from a solution that works, which is what we have now. And one thing I don't want to sort of suggest is that you should wait to deploy an exposure notification solution. We don't think anyone should wait. The market is there, the technology is there, it's working today. We're seeing success in the jurisdictions that are deploying this, and it's really, really important to get started now so that adoption has runway to grow. That's just critical for success with these applications. So there's no reason to hold off getting a solution in the market immediately. But I think it's really important for governments to understand that these solutions are maturing rapidly, and we're learning every single week what's happening. And so choosing a path where you can continue to take advantage of these innovations and developments as they come over the next several months, we think is obviously a really smart direction. And that can happen with Ian Express Android app, but it would happen in this way. You might start with the Ian Express app and then switch it out for a full-featured app. So that's an option that you have, but I think it's a trade-off that every state is going to have to look at and think a little bit about. And we'd love to be there to support you in that decision as you think through it. So thank you very much for taking a few minutes to listen to this presentation and walkthrough. If you have any questions, if you want to talk more about us, we very much encourage you to reach out and hope to have an opportunity to help you with the work that you're doing to address the pandemic in your community. Thank you so much.